Hey, friends. I want to talk about something today that I know has been a major source of frustration to all of us who have covered deeply into and delved deeply into both the Gypstein and the Epstein files, and that is plea deals. What does truth and justice even mean if we constantly have murderers and predators beset back on society due to plea deals? And the only explanation we can get for these plea deals is, well, it saves time and money and the system would collapse without them. Is that justice? The plea deals seem to satisfy nobody except for the criminals who occasionally get sweetheart plea deals and the money counters somewhere up in the government who decided to trade off justice for money, in my opinion, friends. A quick Google search tells me that 90% of prosecutions in America end in some sort of plea deal. It's not always a sweetheart plea deal, but like I said, plea deals very rarely satisfy anyone except maybe the perpetrator who is grateful that they're not getting something far worse. Now, it seems that other countries in the last 30 years have started using plea deals in their systems too. But from what I can find, America is by far the most proliferate plea deal giver. It also looks like plea deals in other countries where punishments for crimes are standardized and not subject to a judge's discernment, that the plea deals there are much more regulated and limited and often don't actually involve lowering the sentence, from what I understand. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. Now, when I was trying to understand why and how plea deals became such a big deal in America, best I can tell from some light Google research is that after the Civil War ended in America in the 1860s, there was such a vast amount of crimes and people to prosecute now that the war was ended. That plea deals were adopted because the system was completely overwhelmed. And to this day, plea deal defenders will say, well, the system would collapse without plea deals. I don't want the system to collapse, but I have to ask myself, is there real justice in a system that can't function without pleading down dangerous people and releasing them back onto society? I just, I don't get it, friends. We've got Gypsy Rose Blanchard dancing for minors on TikTok, advising teens through Cameo, and defiantly discussing how, at a different time, her dream job has always been to be a Disney character and work with children. We knew that from reading her prison emails, but it takes on a whole different tone after we saw those awful videos released from the Freedom of Information Act, thank you, Into the Weeds, of her talking about her plans for her future daughter.
Understand the severity of keeping them a secret. And if we have a girl, the way it has to be is if we have a girl, she has to lose her virginity to you because you are the master of the household. So I'm going to have to explain that to her whenever she comes of age where it's time to explain it. Other than that, like when she's 7, I won't explain that, but around 13, I'll explain. And also,
The Justice Department chose, for whatever reason, to not reveal that information to the public. And if the Freedom of Information Act request hadn't been done, we probably wouldn't know just how much of a predator nature Gypsy Rose had planning that murder and planning other crimes. You can go watch Strategic Eyes on YouTube. He is an active detective who goes over cases and gives his opinion. When he got to that video of Gypsy Rose, his reaction was, oh, she's a PDF file. He said the FBI literally goes on the internet trying to find people who say stuff like this to put them in prison for at least 15 years. And his conclusion was, she got away with it, folks. And that really, really sucks. But I have to agree with him. She did get away with it. The only thing that can limit her now is public call out. Without those FOIAs, we wouldn't have known that her only fear, Gypsy Rose Blanchard's only fear she expressed about planning the future SA of a theoretical daughter was, I'm so scared that someday she might bring the police to our door. She was very cognizant of how wrong what she was saying was. But, plea deal happened. None of those got seen in court. And as far as the justice system is concerned, it apparently doesn't matter. And I don't see the justice in that. Just like I don't see the justice in Jeffrey Epstein's plea deal. How on earth is there justice when somehow, in the midst of that prosecution, with numerous more victims that we now know they had evidence of at the time and were researching and interviewing at the time, they had a lot more credible evidence of tons of more crimes than what he was actually charged with. But just like Gypsy Rose Blanchard, he got a sweetheart plea deal that allowed him to be released and escalate his victimization to a much greater scale because he was just released back out on the public to do it. Even while he was in prison, he had a work release to leave, go do what he pleased. Because we don't know what the reason was that Jeffrey Epstein got his plea deal. Now we know that with Gypsy Rose Blanchard, she cited childhood ABUSE that had never been spoke of before and that she claims to this day she was not aware was happening until her lawyer told her so. Again, with releases of documents both provided by the Blanchards to people and through Freedom of Information Acts, we found that Gypsy actually did have medical problems. There likely wasn't any medical ABUSE, simply exaggerations here and there to get things. And a woman, Dee Dee Blanchard, gave her life over that, over those exaggerations in the most horrific way. She was literally taken in her sleep in a painful manner. Most of us have seen those crime scene pics and wish we hadn't. But Gypsy Rose Blanchard wrote in her book that she has never seen those pics because she was protected from them by her lawyers, by her parents, by people who were, in the jail and court system, apparently. Why? Why are the perpetrators constantly being protected by the system? I don't get it, friends. While doing her 8.5 years in prison, an experience that she's described as being like a college dorm, Gypsy Rose Blanchard collected stimulus checks to hoard up. That's our money, American friends, our taxpayer money. Chunks of it, thousands of dollars, just went to Gypsy Rose Blanchard while she was sitting in prison, tricking men with emails, doing FinDom and pay pigs, and planning to get out and do all the same things she did before. Doing her time consisted of living an online fantasy life through emails and video chats, very, very similar. She talked to these men very much the same ways that she did Nicholas Godejohn. And some of them were similar to him. One was an autistic man who clearly had issues and was talking to her, indicating allegedly that he possibly might have been considering MURDERing his wife. Gypsy apparently still accepts gifts from this man and responds to his comments on her social medias to this day. She chatted away with men with DV charges, with explosive charges, and used those relationships to scare other men she was in relationships with. Similarly, on Epstein's sweetheart plea deal, his girls were coming to visit him, picking him up for the work release. There are emails between him and Nadia, his pilot, possible victim, possible co conspirator, possible both, because they can be both at the same time, in my opinion. But if they are both, they need to answer for one. I don't see how one negates the other always. In some cases, yes, but details just have to be known because we can't, in my opinion, and I realize that this is not a popular opinion, but in my opinion, we can't automatically believe everyone who claims victim status because perpetrators will instantly be aware of that and claim victim status to get away with their crimes. Ghislaine Maxwell claims she is a victim of Jeffrey Epstein. Gypsy Rose didn't start claiming victim status until her lawyer told her to. And she has ever since. And her narrative now is that no one is allowed to question that because a plea deal decided that she gets to come out and give it all a shot all over again. Dee Dee gets no second chance, no rehabilitation, no possibilities of growth and change. And there are women in Chillicothe prison who've never physically hurt anyone and are doing more time than Gypsy Rose got for simple drug charges. And what about Dee Dee Blanchard? Why was her agency and her reputation so easily swept underneath the rug? Gypsy is not documented as ever accusing her mother of physical ABUSE until her lawyer told her to. And this lawyer has stated that he did so because the death penalty was on the table for Gypsy Rose Blanchard because her crime was heinous. And if we give up our right to question someone who makes a victim claim, that claim is going to become a magic silver bullet that perpetrators can always use to get by with their crimes instantly. Well, I was victimized in a way, and that's why I did this. We all have to always be diligent and not be taken in by a sad story because if that is known, everyone will give us a sad story. Heinous criminal perpetrators will give us a very sad victim story. Now, Gypsy Rose continued this pattern out of prison. Anytime someone displeases her, she accuses them of victimizing her. We've seen this pattern with the men that she's with. We've even seen it somewhat with her family and friends, definitely with her friends. This doesn't surprise those of us who've followed this case for a long time. We know her pattern. And we know that Gypsy was perfectly chill with making a video planning the essay of her future child, and her only worry was that that child might bring the police back home to her. Now, the reason why that while shocking, this didn't exactly surprise some of us is because from the prison emails that we got with her, we established another pattern that she weirdly continued after prison. In the prison emails, she claims that Ryan Anderson, her ex husband, not married at the time, confessed an incident to her of inappropriate sexual contact in front of a child. Again, this is simply a claim from Gypsy Rose. However, she then turned around and decided to marry Ryan. Now, after her and Ryan were divorced, we know she cheated on McKean and got pregnant, had a baby before the divorce was final, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, then she started getting unhappy with Keen and started messaging Ryan and actually planned to meet up with Ryan again and bring the baby for him to meet. Now, when all this was revealed through random different leaks of people being messy, Gypsy and Kian went on a live stream and they claimed that they hope and want that Gypsy's prison calls will be released because they say that it would prove that Ryan definitely did confess this to Gypsy. They don't seem to understand or realize that if that is proved, that makes Gypsy look really, really horrible and like she is continuing her pattern of wanting to put children in danger because she made that claim before she married Ryan, then married him anyway, then divorced him, and then made plans to take her daughter, her newborn baby, to see him, even though her and Kian still claim that this is true, that Ryan did this thing in front of a child and is dangerous. They want us to deeply believe that while at the same time brushing aside the fact that Gypsy was going to take her baby to see him and marry him knowing that, if it's true. I don't get it, friends. People want to just play in our face. It's ridiculous. And it's really weird to me how Kian can openly say that, yes, he told Gypsy, absolutely not. You are not taking the baby to see Ryan. I will leave you and file for custody because he believes it's that unsafe. But he still thinks Gypsy is safe, even though she was going to do that, even though they both vociferously claim that Ryan's a predator. How does that make any sense, friends? And if it wasn't for plea deals, it is very likely that had she not gotten, the big DP, she would have spent life behind bars like Nick Godejohn. But a plea deal that set her back out upon society and made her a mother. So I just keep thinking about it and I'm like, how do we get here to the point where saving money was more important than following through to actual justice for heinous crimes and to a point to where pretty much everyone believes if this changed at all that our whole system of justice would collapse. I don't want our system to collapse. It's not perfect, but martial law and, violence in the streets is horrifying, which it would likely be if our system collapsed. So I'm not pretending that I have all the answers here because I don't. I wish I did. But I think more of us need to be asking these questions. Maybe the questions will get to someone who is smarter and more educated than me and will come up with the answer. Because if our whole justice system is hinged on, well, we have to plea deal people like Gypsy and Epstein or it'll collapse, I just don't know what to think or say about that. That is disheartening. It feels like the justice system is very comfortable with telling people like Gypstein and Epstein, oh, just accept this plea deal and you will not be fully punished for your crime, no matter how heinous it was. So I'm really curious to hear what y'all think, friends. Do y'all have a solution? Please tell me about it. And let's go out with a palate cleanser. We need a good one. And I hope to see y'all in the comments. Have a good day, friends.